let's talk about learning English by multitasking. This is something that can really help you in your English learning process. If you can multitask, this means you can find more time to actually learn English. In general, I'm not someone who really likes multitasking. I like to focus all of my energy on one thing at a time. However, there are a couple exceptions to that rule for me. Number one is when I'm listening to audiobooks, and number two is when I'm learning languages. I think multitasking, learning languages by multitasking is a great thing to do. So I want to talk about some different ways that you can multitask. You can do something and also learn English at the same time. So in essence, you're finding extra time to learn English. I think that is something that you could all benefit from. So that's the topic of today's video. By the way, if this is your first time watching one of my videos, welcome. This channel is meant to be a source of listening practice for English learners. So I talk a little bit more clearly and a little bit slower in these types of videos so that you can practice your listening with content that's not exactly native level, but it's more interesting and harder than the more beginner content that you've probably seen all over the internet, right? So I talk about a bunch of different language learning topics. And of course, in my Listening Time podcast, you can go check that out. The link is down below, I think. I talk about even more topics than here. Maybe I'll start to talk about some other non-English or language related topics here. Who knows? But usually they're language related. And remember that you can get my training, my listening practice seminars, and my pronunciation seminars, and other types of training and extra content by becoming a Listening Time member, super member, family member, VIP. There's different levels. You get different things at each level. Check that out. The link is down below. And check out my US Conversations podcast, in which I talk to people from all over the country about different topics. It's a lot of fun. It's great practice for your listening. That link's down below as well. And before we continue, remember to give this video a like and click on the little bell so that you get notified when I upload other videos. Okay? All right, let's talk about learning English by multitasking. So I'm going to give a number of different ways that you can do this, and some of these might be more interesting for you or more relevant to you. Others might not be. But either way, watch the whole video. It's good practice for your listening. So let's get started. Number one, listen to English while doing something else that doesn't require your full attention. This is kind of an obvious one, right? This is probably the easiest way to multitask and learn English while you're doing so. So for me, I think of like a scale of activities. On one end are the activities that don't really require much attention at all. They're mindless activities, we might say. And then on the other end are the activities that require a little more attention and focus. So all of these activities can possibly be done simultaneously with listening to something in English, even the ones that require a little more attention. So for example, walking. I love walking. I help my daughter take her naps. I have a very young daughter, by walking around with her wrapped on my body or in a stroller. I walk for that reason, and I just like walking in general. This requires no attention, no mental energy. So if I listen to something in another language while doing this, I can actually pay a lot of attention to what I'm listening to. So there are activities like walking, which that's great for multitasking, right? Running is good too. You might be a little bit more exhausted and you might not be paying as much attention, but I think that that's still an activity with which you can pair listening. So running is good. Of course, doing chores like the dishes, washing the dishes, I think that's a great time to do some listening. Doing the laundry, folding the clothes after they are dry, things like that, sweeping, mopping. Chores pair very well with listening practice, in my opinion. So that's great. But then there might be some activities that require a little more focus, like weightlifting, right? You can still listen to something and be engaged and also do your workout. However, I find that when you're lifting really heavy weights, you're not focused as much on what you're listening. So in those cases, I think it's still a good opportunity to multitask and listen to English, but you might not be paying quite as much attention to what you're listening to. So that's kind of how I view it. I don't think that it's necessary to only listen to English while you're doing activities that are completely mindless, that require no attention. I think that it's still okay to listen to something even if you're not paying that much attention, because even if you're only paying attention to 25% of what you're hearing, that's still better than nothing. You're still getting more of the language than if you weren't listening at all. So I think it's still okay to do that in those cases. So the more attention the activity requires, the less attention you'll be paying, but it's still a good thing, in my opinion, unless it's like ruining the activity for you. Like if you just can't even do your workout well while you have the distraction of listening to something, then maybe this isn't for you. But in other cases, you can find time or find opportunities to multitask with listening. And one piece of advice that I might give here is that maybe the activity does require more focus, like weightlifting. I'll just keep using that example. You might find that it's beneficial to use easier content for this. For example, my listening time podcast, normal episodes. I talk slowly in those episodes, and so it will probably be easier for you to listen to that type of content while you're lifting heavy weights than listening to a full-on conversation between 3 native speakers at normal speed. You might not really be focused enough to grasp everything that they're talking about. You might get bored with that. I feel that I do better when I'm at the gym and I'm listening to easier material in French, for example, easier content. That actually allows me to pay more attention. And yes, it's a lower level, so you might think, well, that's not as beneficial as using more challenging content, but it's beneficial for other reasons, right? I'm actually capturing more. Maybe I'm focused on certain words or phrases they're using or the sounds or whatever. It's still really beneficial, in my opinion. So listen to the harder content when you're doing activities that require less focus, and easier content when the activity requires more focus. That's a piece of advice that I'll give you. Another way you can multitask and learn English while you're doing something else is by using flashcards when you have to wait somewhere. I got this tip from someone who I talked to in my US Conversations podcast. She talked about the fact that she loves making flashcards, and whenever she's waiting in line for something, she just pulls out the flashcards and starts drilling those flashcards. I love that idea because you don't always have headphones on you to listen, or even if you do, you might think, I don't really want to get those out of my bag or my backpack and put them in and find something to listen to. it might be easier and quicker to just spend that time looking at some flashcards, right? I've tried similar things, like I'll look at like lists of vocabulary that I wrote down from different things, and I think flashcards are even better than that because you're actually like testing yourself. It's more beneficial probably. So maybe I'll do that as well. But I've done similar things to this, and I find that it's perfect because it's a little effort. Just take my phone out, got my vocabulary right there. I start reviewing. Oh, now it's my turn, for whatever I'm waiting for, and I can put my phone away. And I don't have to go through the effort of getting the headphones out and finding something to listen to or watch. So I think it's a good idea to just have some flashcards or something like that. I've tried reading while I'm in line, like, okay, let me pull out like this blog in French. But I find that it's a lot of effort and it's a small screen. So I think something like flashcards or reviewing vocabulary is ideal for this type of situation. So that would be good for you to just have that ready on your phone or physical flashcards or whatever. Just something to do to pass the time, and you know that you're benefiting, you're helping yourself train with certain vocabulary. So I love that idea. I think you should try it. Another way that I wrote down here, this is something I do a lot of nowadays. Talk to yourself when you're doing something that requires almost no attention. Obviously, if you're doing something that requires a lot of attention, you're not going to be able to, focus on what you're saying. But if you're doing something like waiting somewhere, like I just said, maybe you're in the waiting room at the doctor's office or whatever, or you're waiting in line, or you're walking like I do a lot, or you're on public transportation, or whatever it is that doesn't really require focus, it's great to start talking to yourself. If you're in public, you might just want to do this, in your head, but if you can do it out loud, that's even better, in my opinion. And this is great. This gives you speaking practice. You're not talking to someone, I know, but you're still talking. And so you're not getting like the instant feedback of a tutor correcting you, helping you, or whatever, but you're still just getting that repetitive practice of moving your mouth, getting your brain going, and actually producing the language. Even if you can't look up the words and phrases you don't know or correct yourself, because we can't always do that in that moment, it's still good. You can just skip a sentence you don't know and just keep on talking, continue the thought with the next sentence, or fill in the gap that you don't know with the sentence in your own language maybe. But the idea is to just give yourself speaking practice. So talking to yourself is a fantastic activity, okay? I highly recommend it, and it's something you can do while you're doing other things, if you do it in your head or maybe even out loud. So I like doing that. That's something I do all the time. I recommend you do that as well. Another thing you can do, this won't apply to all of you, but to some of you it will, and that is language stacking, okay? I was also talking about this topic with that same person that I talked to in that U.S. Conversations podcast episode. She mentioned that she likes to do language stacking, meaning you use one of the languages you're learning to learn another language. So, like I said, this won't apply to everyone, but if you're learning two languages, right? Let's just say in this case, your English is at a pretty decent level and you want to also learn Spanish. So let's just take this to the next level and say you're not even doing this for English, you're doing it for Spanish, right? So you can use English to learn Spanish by consuming resources. I shouldn't say consume, but using resources like beginner courses, for example. You can do the course for Spanish that is meant for English speakers. And so you're using your English to learn Spanish. I've actually done that before a little bit with Duolingo. That's another thing. Like with these apps, if you like them, you can put the app in like the language that you're better at, and then say that you're learning the other language. So maybe you say that you want the app to be for English speakers, but you're learning Spanish. I did this briefly a long time ago with Spanish and French. I used Duolingo in Spanish to learn French. I liked it. It was really cool. I think that's a great thing you can do. So whether it's a course or it's something like Duolingo, an app like that, or maybe it's looking up translations to words. Maybe when you look up translations, instead of looking up the Spanish word and the translation in your language, maybe it's the Spanish word to English, right? So again, this will only apply to people who are learning more than one language, but I'm sure some of you are doing this, and that's kind of a way of multitasking. You can learn another language while also learning English or reinforcing your English, right? Another thing is you can learn something else, a completely unrelated topic in English, right? A completely unrelated subject. I talked to another person in a different U.S. Conversations podcast episode about this. He mentioned that he had like a consultation, a training with like a business coach, but that business coach, I think, was from Brazil. And so this person, instead of doing the whole training in English, they did it in Portuguese because this person that I talked to is learning Portuguese. So he multitasked by getting good business advice, but also practicing his Portuguese while doing that. That's super cool. That's something that you can do once you've reached a certain level in English, for example. Maybe you want to take a cooking course in English, right? And you're learning to cook, but you're learning all of this in English. That's awesome. Or maybe you want to learn a musical instrument, right? You want to learn the guitar. So you follow a tutorial on YouTube that is done in English for English speakers. So you're learning the guitar, but you're learning English as well while doing that. So this is one of the best ways to multitask, in my opinion. You're being ultra productive. You're learning something new and you're doing it in English, so you're learning English as well, even though that's not the primary reason for that thing that you're doing, right? And another thing, I guess this is maybe the last one I have on my list. There are more, but the last one I put is consume entertaining content in English. So you can even multitask while having fun, okay? For example, I'm sure a lot of you use social media. Here in my circle of people, a lot of people consume Reels, Instagram Reels. They scroll through and watch a lot of Reels. I know it's the same for the other type of short form content, right? A lot of people consume this type of media in their free time. It helps them relax, or it's entertaining, or whatever. So why not do that in English? Why not consume this type of entertainment in English instead of in your native language? And this can be done for other things as well, not just social media. For example, Netflix, right? Or whatever streaming service you use. Why not use that? And, at the end of your day, you want to watch something in English and put the English subtitles on if you need them. This is kind of an obvious one. I'm sure many of you already do this, but I had to include that. YouTube is another big one. Watch YouTube videos in English instead of in your language. Maybe some of you already do that. You're watching this video right now, but don't just watch content for English learners, right? Watch just other content that you're interested in English on YouTube, right? I will admit that for me, when I want to be entertained, I don't always want to combine this with language learning. And you might feel the same way. You might feel like, I'm tired. I had a long day of work, or my kids have been sick all day, and I just want to lie down and watch something in my language. I completely understand that. And for me, one of my favorite things to do for entertainment is read or listen to audiobooks, right? And for me, to be honest, I prefer to do that in English because I love books. I love novels. I love classic literature. And I don't usually want to make this a language learning activity, to be honest. I kind of just want to listen or read in English. And so I'll admit that, it's funner to just consume content in your native language for entertainment. However, you might find that you spend a lot of your free time watching Netflix or YouTube or on some social media platform, and you can substitute a small percentage of that time. I don't think that you need to just change everything to English, all of your entertainment. If you're really motivated, why not? You could definitely do that. But for the average person, this might be a little hard, right? We want to just have some time just for us in our language and not be learning a language while we're doing it. And that's me. So I'm not going to switch all of my books and audiobooks to another language, right? But why not dedicate a percentage of that time, right? A lot of you might say that you spend more than an hour consuming content, maybe 2 hours. I think that's pretty standard for a lot of people around the world, especially now that tons of people have instant access to entertaining content. So why not take 20% of that time and dedicate that to English? And not just studying English, like you can still be entertained, consume that entertaining content, but do so in English instead of in your language. So you don't got to switch everything to English, but maybe take a small percentage of that time and then consume content in English instead, right? So that's something that I would do if I were like into social media, which I'm not, but if I were, I would probably want to combine that a little bit with my language learning and feel more productive, but not the whole time, like I said. I would want time that's just pure entertainment, or pure relaxation, but why not substitute a little bit of that time to like multitasking? You're having fun, but you're learning English as well. So let me give just a final point, okay? I hear this all the time, right? People complain about not having enough time to learn. And I know that feels like the case. We don't have enough time to learn whatever it is, but in this case, English, right? People want to learn English, but they just can't find time to learn English. So maybe this is your case. Maybe you feel like you can only watch one video, like this video, and that's all the time you have today, right? And I get that. I'm someone who has a lot of things to do. I've got kids, I make all this content. I've got all kinds of stuff going on. And so I feel like this as well. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, if there's something that's really important that we really want to do, I think that it's a matter of prioritizing, okay? And it can be hard to admit this, but a lot of times when we say that we don't have time to do this thing that we really like, we're really saying that we're not prioritizing that thing that we supposedly really like to do. And if you're honest with yourself and you say, hey, I just don't want to do that thing as much as I thought I did, and that's fine. If that's the case, no problem. But if you say, you know what, I really want to spend more time learning English, then you can prioritize it. And maybe you say, well, I can't prioritize it because it's my job. I can't put English over my job or my family or whatever. And I agree. But multitasking kind of helps you do that without needing to completely like throw something else out of your life, like getting rid of something else out of your life, or completely replacing something. You can also do that, right? Maybe you want to replace part of your free time with English study. That's great. But maybe you just find every instance throughout your day during which you can actually combine one of these other activities, like listening or flashcards or whatever. And, sit down, think of what you do every day, and think of the things that don't really require a whole lot of focus, right? Maybe some, but not a lot of focus. Don't do this while you're working, okay? Don't slack on your work because of this. But if you have to, drive to work, if you have to walk anywhere, if you have to wait in a line, if you have to just wait for whatever reason, if you work out, if you run, if you do chores at home, I'm sure you do one of those things, right? And so whatever that thing is or those things are, ask yourself, what can I do while I do that so that I can also learn English? Can I listen to something? Can I review something? Is there an app I can use while I'm waiting for something? Whatever that may be, or maybe you can talk to yourself, right? Don't forget that one. Whatever that may be, combine that. And you'd be surprised at how much more practice you can end up doing just by multitasking a little bit. There have been times during my language learning journey where like most of my language learning was done through multitasking. Like the majority of time I spent learning whatever language was done while I was doing something else. So that should show you that multitasking can really help you find some extra time to learn English. So even though you might not have a lot of free time, there's probably something that you can combine with English and you can get a little bit more practice during your day. So I hope this video was interesting for you. If you have a special or interesting way to multitask with English, let me know in the comments down below. Maybe that'll be helpful for other people. You can give us good ideas on how you multitask. And remember that you can get my training, my listening seminars, my pronunciation seminars, my sound training, that kind of stuff. You can check that out by clicking on the link below for my membership. So check all that out, and check out my US Conversations podcast as well. I talk to people from around the country about different topics. It's tons of fun. It's really educational. That link is also down below. So go check that out. Remember to give this video a like, leave a comment, click on the little bell thing, and you know the drill. Thank you all for watching this video, and I'll talk to you in the next one.